my college draft is proudly announced by a conference called Educate You. Educate You core areas will cover recruitment, retention, and how to build a strong alumni base of underrepresented and first-generation college students.
And that was my point, is that it's not just giving back to the community. It has a whole lot more to do with, that's why education is so important, because it has to do with the way we think. You know, I'm not stop.
There was there's this study, this documentary that's going around talking about black churches and how they, there's been $420 billion they try to make it seem like it's revenue or profits, but it's been revenue since 1980 within the black church. Mm-hmm. And they say, why haven't our communities gotten better if we got all these churches everywhere? You can drop $420 billion into St. Louis right now, and St. Louis is not going to change, right?
That's right.
You know, that it's just not enough. We're talking about 30 years time frame, and there's this belief that people are not doing what they're supposed to do, or not trying to affect change, but not seeing that there's just not enough resources on that end. That's a systemic thing. It's something that we have to get into these positions of power within our government to be able to affect change. You know,
and equitable resources, not just equitable resources.
But you know what? I like what you said though about this $420 billion, because one thing that really makes me mad is this idea that we can solve all the problems if we have the money. Because that's just not real. We've seen states and departments of ed and all that stuff. There is so much money in education.
Yeah. There's
so much money in education. But because they don't have an effective strategy, and because we're using outdated methods, and just like you said, our higher education system is built from a system that started in the 1400s for white men. Mm-hmm. So where are we in this? You see what I'm saying? Yeah. And so that's what I'm saying.
We all work in the education space, right? And one of the things that all of our institutions is trying to do is to improve the retention rates, the graduation rates of multicultural students.
Exactly.
We just said, and it's a proven fact that HBCUs have been doing this right since the beginning.
Right.
How much research or literature are your institutions using from those colleges to improve their
we don't even have to go that far. How many times do they really ask you who work there every day? I mean, I'm talking about really ask you and are willing to put the money, right? With what I'm saying, they're willing to provide the support and resources to get to this value of, well, we appreciate diversity and we support multicultural and we because like you said, everybody wants to fix this problem and address these students, but you have people right there at the institution as faculty, staff, administrators who you don't even listen to regarding their people. You'll pay a consultant $1 million to come in
and say the same
thing that the people that work with you every day can tell you.
And then take that report from the consultant and file it in a cabinet somewhere.
Exactly.
You still don't want to check it out.
Then they can show that, hey, we did something about it, but nothing. We didn't end up with no results. But it's just a way to have basically a headline but not do anything about it. Exactly. At the end of the day.
So answer this. Do you guys think that they're still pure HBCUs considering what the population is becoming at some of these schools?
What's the pure
HBCU?
Like predominantly
black.
Right.
There's a couple that have already flipped. There's a couple HBCUs that are now predominantly white.
Like,
I can't remember.
What you call it?
Blue.
Lincoln, I think it's
Lincoln.
But I think that
there's another one too.
Well, I mean, like your Black Ivy League and your A&Ms and things that are down south, they're still predominantly white for the most part. Right?
Mm-hmm. No, it's like going up in like, I want to say it's Kentucky or something like that. Blue. It has blue in the name, but I can't remember right now. But there's a couple. But what's your question behind that? Like,
so my question is, I mean, the debate is here, and we talked about, like Brian was talking about, like assisting them, right? And then we talked about the elitism that we both feel towards each other, and they're becoming like us now. We instead of us looking at them as an example of how to help us, they're looking at us and mirroring our institutions. Like I went to look at license brochures, and they look more like the institutions that a lot of us went to, a lot of us worked at. Mm-hmm. So
as far as demographics,
like it's like you literally can't even tell anymore literally, if you just look at a lot of their
That's
information, that's HBCU, right? And so
I think the experiences are the biggest differences between the two.
it was starting to transition, so I transitioned back, but
So what I was gonna say, so for an example, HBCUs typically when those students come in, they have some type of mentor, right? That helps them navigate college, helps them kind of figure out what's gonna be my steps, gives them somebody to tie to on campus that they can go to. I don't feel like at a PWI we don't do that with black students.
why don't we?
Well, we do, but it is a
I mean, like
specialized program.
overall, we don't. I didn't have that experience when
I
I
didn't either.
I mean,
But now they-
But let me ask you this though, can I ask,
But now they-
you didn't have experience, or did you, because for most of the PWIs, the advisor is supposed to be your mentor. That's supposed to be the one who's going to navigate the classes for you, right?
But my advisor wasn't somebody I can go to.
You might not be able to relate to them. That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying is
So
that
they
you don't
didn't
relate
look
to
like me. The experience is going to be completely different.
That's right.
They can't tell me, hey, yeah, I've been through this and seen these things. They have no clue. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah, I'm not, that experience is going to be different. So for us, we had to create that experience. You know,
That's
for the
right.
few people that were there, okay, let's make a multicultural student union, or let's make
Where it's
a
standard
BSU or something like that, so we can build that experience amongst ourselves. And then also, one of the things for me, I guess, learning how to deal with different topics that would be difficult at a PWI versus a topic that would be difficult at a HBCU. Like, I can walk around and be proud of being black and all that kind of stuff and protest at a HBCU and get support from faculty, staff, whomever's there. But at a PWI, I gotta figure out, okay, how do we navigate this
There's that
and still
imposter
do
syndrome that's
it,
there.
right? But not come off aggressive or offend anybody.
That's
or
real life.
anything like that.
I mean,
I understand
you know what I'm
that.
saying?
I understand
So,
that.
I mean, several things I was gonna say is to your point, there has to be, if that's how HBCUs essentially are known to deal with their incoming freshmen. Remember the whole push, My Brother's Keeper, and things of that nature, the African American initiatives that came about within the last decade or so at predominantly white institutions were based on the philosophy of mentorship. And so that must be the part that came from HBCUs to the PWIs, is that dealing with these minority students, we need to create these mentorship structure style programs. And you've seen there's been a robust, there are a plethora of these across the country. However, I think the difference, like what you're saying with the experience at an HBCU is, that's just how it is. It's organic.
Well, I think,
It's not manufactured.
can I build, so I just want to make sure that the people know, none of us have went to an HBCU.
Right.
So I would just like to make sure we create a room that we are somewhat assuming what we think might happen. Because someone who might be like, nah, we actually have these kind of issues that's going on that we never thought about. So I just want to make sure that we make it clear for the viewers. We understand that none of us actually attended, and I would love to hear some feedback from those who actually went to an HBCU for undergrad. I think one of my assumptions on why I think HBCUs could be a benefit, though, is it automatically removes the, I'm not going to say excuse, but the thought of it's because I'm black, I'm having these problems. So now it's really, if you're struggling in your class or you got a D on your project, it ain't they just messing with me to try to make me work harder because I'm black. It might be you got a D on your project. You know what I'm saying? So there's more of a, that removes those excuses that one might have. I'm not gonna say excuses, but those experiences that one might have on why they feel like they're struggling, and they're doing like they're struggling part of it because of their identity at a PWI. So I think that could.
But what did we say to the students that graduate from a historically black college and university, and they struggle with obtaining a job because that is on their resume?
That's different though. They struggle with obtaining a job because the brand is.
I got you. Yeah. I'm just saying, but you know how we've had to redact names from the resume process because.
I don't know. I mean, it's changing. Like I know, like South Carolina State is the first It came out a couple years ago. I think it was in 2016. South Carolina State became the first business school that was ranked in the top 50 in the nation. And it was the first HBCU which had a business school ranked in the top 50. And so I think some of these programs, they're finding ways to build and get that, because the thing I don't like is for those that I don't like the whole U.S. News ranking. I really can't stand it. Like, that's a whole nother subject by itself, because it's really, if you're talking about celebrity paying, that is the equivalent for institutions to be branded. Is they pay a lot of stuff just to get these numbers. I mean, if people forget, while the college scamming thing was happening, people didn't see that Yale had to pay, what was it, $250 million back to the government because they lied on their data to get federal grants. People missed that all around.
I totally missed that.
Yeah, because they kept on doing the whole thing, but no one thought about Yale cheating on stuff, and they had to pay back their grants because they lied on it to the federal government. So we're seeing that institutions are just going to do what they need to survive and brand themselves, and so that goes back to it.
And going back to survival as well, and the original question was about how the landscape and the population of these schools are changing in some places. Being in enrollment management and knowing how important those enrollment tuition dollars are to lifeblood of organizations, especially as states continue to cut. Universities, HBCU, PWI, whatever, HSI, they're going to do what they need to do to survive, right? So if they have to recruit students who are not, first of all, they can't just shut out the institution from anybody because they can't discriminate. So anybody can attend an HBCU, but if they're actively recruiting, it's because there are seats that are empty. And if they leave those seats empty, they close down, right? So it's like, we have to be in a space to where we understand that HBCUs are not attractive to all black students. If they're all not going to go, they have to understand that as well. And so they're catering, and also the demographics of the state. Missouri, Langston, Oklahoma, and Missouri are pretty white states, right? They don't have a base to pull students from, so you have to get white students just to keep the doors open, right? So I don't know how to fix that, but I can't blame or look down on HBCUs whose demographics are changing.
Because I don't necessarily know that that's a negative, right? I mean, the reality is that just like predominantly white institutions, part of the reason that African American students struggle and other students of color struggle, part of the reason is because of what it is rooted on and founded on, and that history and the artifacts and all of those things, which historically black colleges and universities have those things as well. And so even without the person that is attending maybe completely understanding what it is they're engaging within an HBCU, we essentially are able to help create someone who is more diverse in their thought and can possibly deal with other cultures differently based on their experience at an HBCU. I mean, in reality, I'm not saying everything needs to flip, but it might not be a bad idea to have more people educated that are different races at an HBCU. Because a lot of
allyship and those types of things, is that what you're getting at? Or?
Yeah, because a lot of the reasons that we have the problems we have is based on fear of us as a people, right? I mean, that goes all the way back to, we can talk about all kinds of stuff that gives us that root of fear, like Birth of a Nation. I mean, Griffith did an excellent job instilling fear that has yet to subside. So I think that relationship was, when you talk about bridging the gap, the first thing that came to my mind was to build the relationships, right? And you bridge gaps through relationships, and I don't think we have those.
I'm not going to touch it.
No, I want you to cut me out. I want you to. No, I know it's not about being serious. I want you to go. I'm
thinking, first I want to clarify, it was Duke University. It's $112 million. They had to go back and pay the girl. I don't want viewers to be like, don't talk about Yale. It's Duke. 112. It's 112. Yeah, get out now. Flashlight. But I think too that we have to look at. I understand there's this notion of, like you was talking about, this geographic location and where you're located. My whole thought process behind that is at least try to mirror the demographics in which you reside.
Yeah.
Right. So yeah, if you're in a state or you're in a community that's 98% white, if you're getting that on your metrics when you look at your, your enrollment statistics, if you're in a state that's 1.2, if you're in 1.2% black and you got that and you're matching that the reflection of your state, I can't really get mad about that.
Well, wait a minute now, because on some level, in higher education is supposed to expose us to a diverse ways of thinking. And the problem with homogenous groups is that lack of diversity tends to create problems in the future. So I was going to say that I'm looking at it more like the population of students, because I understand what you're saying. Like, you can't blame somebody if they end up with students that they're in that situation, but I think we should aim to have more diverse student bodies, and at minimum the administration should reflect the student bodies.
Yeah, that's huge.
That's more of my, I'm just saying.
Let me push back though. What I'm saying though is, though, I could be at the University of, I'm making this up, University of Montana. There ain't gonna be a lot of folk that like us.
That's because we never.
No, I'm talking about in general, residents, state residents. There's gonna be a lot of state residents. Let's not even talk about college recruit. There's state residents in Montana,
right?
Because it's just not favorable for our natural ethnic makeup. We like residents. So you can't fault that university if they are like, we're trying to recruit, but ain't nobody really trying to, like, we say Montana, people are like, miss me with that.
Yeah, I'm not saying
Idaho.
I think that you're right. That's what I was saying. I get it that obviously if you're within a certain geographic location, I get it that demographics apply. I'm just saying that we aim to diversify. And then I was saying that I see a stronger issue with administration not reflecting student body than I do with, because I think that's going to naturally happen. I think you're naturally going to look like the people, the surroundings you're around, unless you're being intentional and not looking like them. And that would be where I think that's an issue. And I agree with that. If you're in the heart of because you're in the heart of urban America and you're surrounded by, because I've seen this a lot. You have these schools that are in the heart of the ghetto, and no one looks like the people that are around that school. There's no outreach going around. There's no recruitment. They put up some walls and some fences, and then they're separated from their community over time. And that way, I agree with what you're saying.
But when I read, like, I did a discussion, I talked before about this, about why is a lot of your major universities right next to the worst part of the city? It's like literally right across the street from like the hood part of the city. So if you think about some of your major universities, if you go visit their campuses, within about 2 miles, you're gonna see the worst part of the city right next to it. And so it's always talking about, we want to give back to the community, but how are you doing it? You know what I'm saying? Like, what does really mean do you want to give back? Because going to what you're saying, let's push this thing about diversity. There's this thing called, in critical race theory, this interest convergence, right? That we're only going to do things that benefit minorities if it ultimately benefits us.
That's right.
And what's one of the main things that's happening is that we're seeing this push on diversity and inclusion, but we also have to be very skeptical and be mindful of, well, that's because tuition and fees is now one of the main indicators on how much, tuition and fees and research grants is really going to be the two things that drive revenue for institutions. But if campuses are becoming more diverse, right, that means you can't rely just on your white students to give you all that money. You got to find ways to recruit and retain these black students, all right? But that's been going on for years.
2023 is when the flip happens. There's going to be more graduating seniors of color than there are white students in the nation. It's never going to go back. So institutions are just so far behind in preparing for those students. Now, most of those students are going to be in the Latinx community, but a lot of those students are black and Asian too. There's even though there's this facade of preparedness and trying to transform missions to reflect that, but money follows mission, right?
Yes.
Joe Biden on the campaign trail when they were going against, I think it was the second time that Obama invited one, he said, "Don't tell me what your values are. Show me your budget, and I'll tell you what your values are."
Yeah, exactly.
And so we're still not putting enough money in there to prepare for these students, but it's going to eventually be a lot of schools' downfall because they're just not ready.
So I just want to remind people, you're listening to the My College Grad Educate You podcast. You just brought up Obama, right? And so one of the things that for a lot of four-year schools, they were upset about the 2-year opportunity for that Obama's presenting. Right? And so I was wondering, I'm just putting this on the table right now. Do you guys feel it's an issue to get more students into the 2-year as opposed to 4-year?
I like it.
What do you?
Well, I'm gonna be honest, just be transparent. I'm a Bernie guy, and I'm a College for All guy, and that's going to be done through partnerships with community colleges anyway. And so, the institution I work at right now, 25% of our students are transfers already. It's just the way that, I mean, if we want to attract students to 4 years automatically, then we have to find a way to cull the price point. So it's not, institutions are just going to have to change in such a way that we're able to be prepared for these transfer students from these community colleges once it happens. And we have to find a way to be more efficient and economically welcoming to students coming in the pipeline too, or else, do we really deserve it? Now, also, what I don't see, even though there's going to be, I really do believe eventually there's going to be some sort of free college for all plan that happens. Not all students are going to take advantage of that. Students are going to want the 4-year experience. Students are going to want that residential hall, what you see on TV experience. They're going to be willing to pay for it. It's going to be for students who don't have access to anything right now. I think are going to be the most affected, which is students that look like us. So I'm all for it, to be honest with you. I know it's going to be a financial strain on 4-year institutions in the short term, but if we do what we're supposed to do to react or prepare for that, then it'll work itself out, I think.
I think 2-year institutions have created a nice space, and they're doing certain things that 4-year institutions have not been able to do. And I think the reason that they have become successful is because they're not scared to admit who they're serving. They don't have an identity crisis.
Exactly.
Can you give examples of the space that you just mentioned?
Yeah, so what I'm saying is that a student that goes to a 2-year institution, the people that work at a 2-year institution are, like you said, more welcoming to their financial situation, and they create a space. The space has been created for this student who maybe is a first-generation college student, maybe can get the Pell Grant and maybe some student loans, and maybe they are not sure if they even want to go to a 4-year school. This space allows them, creates a low stakes environment for them to tinker and taste. I get a taste of education. I get a taste of what it may be like. You kind of see what I'm saying? And they're able to do that in a low stakes format. Whereas you go to a 4-year institution your first year, and then you find out you don't have enough money to go to school, and then you find out that you got to find out who's going to pay on a payment plan. So the stress associated with the fact that you can't eat because you didn't get the right meal plan because the right one was way too expensive, right? All those things can be played out in maybe a student not being retained.
So does the revolving door matter at all to you guys?
The revolving door.
They go in and they just come right back out, and the retention rate at the community colleges are not that great. Does that matter to you?
Well, it's okay. So for a community college or a junior college, there's also another part of it, right? They're preparing people to get jobs and go into the field. So those schools are built around finding what needs are in the community and providing those.
Exactly.
Right? So if we need more plumbers, if we need more whatever, that's what they're going to be building programs around. So people can come in and they may only be there for 6 months, 9 months, whatever, and they're going to get their certificate and they're going to go to work. Compared to what we measure stuff off of is a 2-year or a 4-year completion.
Exactly.
So that's why the retention numbers jump at community colleges a lot, because a lot of them are coming in. I'm getting my 6 months, my 9 months, and I'm going off to go do heavy equipment. But they'll be paying me $100, an hour to work this heavy equipment. So those things are also different. When you start talking about community colleges versus a 4-year or stuff that's offered. So people who don't really want to be in college and do the whole 4 years, but still want to try to find a decent job, they go and get that skill set and then go to work.
That's why you see a lot. I mean, I agree 100% with David saying, because I used to work at a community college, and when you read assess what you're defining as student success.
Exactly.
Because a lot of times, like exactly what you're saying, we're defining it based off the institutional perspective. Like,
Exactly.
the student's like, no, I completed exactly what I need to get, and because you guys gave me an opportunity to come in and do remedial classes or whatever I need to do to get picked up, that helped out, right? Going back to what Amber was saying too, though, I think community colleges have done a wonderful job in spinning the narrative and perspective about what they were.
Okay.
So when I was in high school, community colleges looked at it as like, you were dumb.
Yeah.
Like, you could not, it's not going to prepare you, you're not college material, and community college, and I think community colleges,
2.0, that's what they were saying.
yeah, and so now community college is taking that, and now it's like, it's a great financial investment because they can get you up to speed, and it is low risk, so you don't have to pay as much money, the price point is low, but then community college starts taking that advantage and saying, look, we can help you actually get a 4-year degree with less
Exactly.
and less loans on the back end.
And the transfer scholarship.
Right.
When I hear recruitment coming from 2 years, that is the message. It's not, it's if you want a 4-year degree, we can get you there with less
Exactly.
debt.
Less than money, yeah. I mean, that's what it is. And I mean, I'm thinking about myself. I'm coming out with 6 figures in student loan debt with the PhD, right? But it's like, that's a lot of students are going through that. And do you want that for minority students when we already talked earlier about the class that most minorities fall into a lower socioeconomic class where the earning power and potential after graduation, regardless of your field,
Okay.
because there was a study that showed that they showed the terminal degrees comparison, right? So a minority student who ended up being a doctorate and a white who ended up being a doctorate, minority students are still making less. So when you look at everything equal, you're still making less. So you might as well try to have a system to where you come out with less debt as possible, so you can create a greater yield and make up that money fast.
The revolving door that bothers me even more than, so I hear what you're saying about community colleges, retention rates, and I think sometimes some of that's not even, it's all hazy to me, because if a student transfers after their first year of school to a 4-year, that knocks on a 2 years retention rate too. So that number is really fuzzy to me anyway. But what bothers me more, even if those students are, let's say that they're flunking out, is students who are coming to these institutions that are 4 years, that are expensive, and we admit these students knowing they don't have money to pay, knowing we're not going to offer them enough financial aid to pay, and they pass all their class. They might have 3.0, 3.5, whatever, but they have that $500 bill, $1,000 bill on their account, and they got to go home because they can't enroll. And then it snowballs, because not only can they not enroll at K-State or KU or Wichita State or whatever institution that they're at, you can't enroll anywhere else because you can't get a transcript, right?
And then you turn down scholarships. I've seen them turn down scholarships at different schools, right?
Yeah.
Thinking that I'm gonna have enough to go to this one. You know, so because they don't understand, right? And like you said, I feel like it's our responsibility to be like, wait a minute, you know,
So-
I want to go to this school.
So I love it. I think that if we're representing 4 years here, I don't even know if that's what we're doing, but 4 years, we always talk about the market, right? You know, supply and demand. If you're going to compete with 2 years who are better financial options for students, black, white, or whatever, put your money where your mouth is. You have to start offering better aid, need-based scholarships, those types of things to supplement.
Yeah.
Or because if you're not competitive, you're just not competitive. You change, sink or swim, right? That's what we're talking about at this point.
Go ahead.
The other thing too with community colleges or tier colleges, whatever you want to call it, a lot of those students are non-traditional students. They're not your traditional fresh out of high school going and straight into college students. They're actually dealing with real world problems, you know. So that also could affect them whether they're going to be there or not, you know, because they're working a full-time job, they're taking care of their family and doing all this other stuff while trying to go to school at the same time. So it's a totally different set of stresses from the different type of people that you're dealing with.
Let me ask you a question. So a lot of times when they do transition from community to 4-year, a lot of them still not ready. They're still not ready. So how can we help improve that process? Because when it comes to the 4-year school, it impacts our numbers in a negative way at times.
I want to jump on this one. Alright, I'm good on myself about your 30 seconds.
Go ahead.
It's because we lie.
Okay, bro.
Straight up. Because this is what I'm saying. We got to stop telling students that college is the only way.
Okay.
Lifelong learning and pursuit is the way. But when we tell people when they're in high school, go to college, get a good job. Go to college, get a good job. Well, what happens if I'm a cosmetologist or I'm in culinary arts or HVAC? You don't need to go to a 4-year brick and mortar school to get lifelong learning where you can make a job that's recession proof. Because everybody gonna go get their hair done regardless of what the market's going, right?
Right.
And so I think part of it is this narrative that you feel like I have to go to a 4-year, right?
Ain't no farther to try.